Hello, hello, testing, testing. For those who are here early, just to let you know, the stream will begin in about 5-7 minutes. So get ready. If you can, make sure you share the video, like, subscribe. Make sure as many people see this as possible. Guys, 2 minutes. 2 minutes before I start the stream. Make sure you're all ready. Get your thinking caps on. Don't fall asleep. We're going to be going over some really important stuff soon, so... Again, make sure you share the stream. I want as many people to see this as possible, as I'm going to be making multiple videos on this topic. This is just the first of many. If you're here, let me know in the live chat. 1 minute till we start, guys. Make sure you like, share the video. Just want to make sure, can you guys hear me alright? As I'm going to be talking over the slides, so if you can't hear me, let me know. Or if there's any issues with the sound quality. Again, it's my first time streaming on YouTube. I usually stream on TikTok by just debating, but today we're doing a little bit different. We've got a PowerPoint to go through. Yeah, I don't have a proper microphone. I'm just using my computer's microphone. So I'll probably invest in one in the future, but for now, you have normal audio. Let me know in the chat if you guys are ready to begin. I'm happy to start now. Again, not a lot of people in here right now, but hopefully more people will start joining soon. Yeah, and again, this video is live, but we will re-upload it to YouTube later if you want to re-watch it. And then afterwards, after the stream, after the PowerPoint is done, I'll let people ask some questions, because again, this video is as concise as I can put this topic, as there's far too much material to put into one PowerPoint. I've tried my best in summarizing everything, but again, there's way too much detail for a single stream to go over all the content. So again, we're going to be covering the topic of World War III and the prophecies associated with it in the Orthodox Church. As you can see here in the image in front of me, it's pretty intense, the events that are predicted. We've got a lot of people involved, a lot of moving parts, and more importantly, we have a lot of saints which do speak of the great events which are prophesied to come. So we're going to be going over those, starting with Saint John the Theologian. So let's just begin. So all of our prophecies in regards to the end times and future events, if you want to put it as such, start with the Apocalypse, or the book of Revelation, written by Saint John. And, you know, Saint John was exiled to Patmos, and where he wrote the book of Revelations. And there are some really important things which the elders and saints of our church speak about. So the first one is the Euphrates River. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about this. But in Revelations, it speaks of 4 angels bound at the Euphrates being released at a vast army, and a vast army bringing death to a third of humanity. And later elders, such as Saint Paisios, which we'll cover soon, conflates this with a 200 million person army crossing the Euphrates, Asia, or China. Again, the numbers can be metaphorical, it can be literal. This is what is written, and only when these events come can we know the true understanding of these prophecies. There's a really powerful scene actually in the book of Revelation, which Saint John sees an angel with one foot in the sea and another in the land, holding a scroll. And a heavenly voice says, "Keep it secret, do not write these things down." Now, the whole idea of Revelation was to, again, uncover. Revelation or apocalypse just means to uncover things. And it's quite strange that this heavenly voice says, "Do not unveil these things," right? So it keeps going further. It says, "Keep on telling what will happen to the people of my nation." And John wasn't actually allowed to write this down, as it says, "God's secret plan will be revealed to the prophets of the age." Now, who is he talking about? It's not talking about prophets such as like the Old or New Testament, not new public revelation. This is revelation given to the holy ascetics, the saints, the elders of our church, to help us come closer to God, closer to repentance. So continuing on with Saint John, we see that there is imagery of a great war. This is most prominent in Revelations chapter 9 to chapter 11. We see that there is, what we'll see also later, is divine intervention, where the demons which have been let loose throughout the ages are bound up. And then after this, we see that the gospel is preached to all nations. The seventh trumpet in the book of Revelation is categorically assigned as a period of doctrinally pure teaching guided by John the theologian during this era of peace. Again, we haven't seen this yet, as the Orthodox gospel hasn't been preached to all nations, right? So Christianity, you can say, has gone to all nations, but the elders say that this is not the Christianity or the gospel that was originally given to the apostles. So this is necessary before Christ and his great second coming can happen. They speak of two witnesses in the book of Revelations. Here we have three that are mentioned by the elders: Enoch, Elijah, and Saint John the theologian, who will give witness to Christ and be slaughtered by the Antichrist. We won't cover a lot of the Antichrist material today. This is mainly a World War III video. We'll probably cover that in a different stream. But again, as you can see, the book of Revelation is the start of these prophecies. Now, from the 7th century to the 10th century, we see a lot of traditions come out of the Roman Empire about this last emperor and this great battle that's going to happen. So these texts include Methodius, Tarasius, Leo VI, Andrew the Fool, and Agathanangelos. And again, all of these prophecies, if we were to go in detail, which unfortunately we cannot today, go through all the texts, they all repeat the same thing, how there'll be this last Roman emperor which will spread orthodoxy to the entire world. So as we can see here, there will be a terrible world war centered around Constantinople, where Western Papists, or Latins as we refer to them, and other forces are gathered around and destroyed. The Pope's crusaders gathered in the outskirts of the city and killed. Out of the slaughter emerges a prophesied king, a holy monarch sent by God to restore justice and orthodoxy. The king's power is described as unprecedented. The power of the prophesied king will be tremendous. Never has such power been given to a man. Now, who is he talking about? Again, we will uncover that very shortly. But we start off basic. There is a king who will be unveiled to the Orthodox Christian people and will eventually rule over them. And then we come to the fall of Constantinople. Now, the way we see the fall of Constantinople in the Orthodox Church is as chastisement by God himself. So Elder Ananias Gustinis gives a very clear theological reading of 1453. Byzantium fell because the Byzantines stopped loving Christ and loving their fellow man, turned to money, discord, indulgence. They even sought help from the Pope, and in the end, it was God's will for the city to become Turkish. We received our penance. Again, this is that idea of chastisement, that God's people turn away and God allows other nations to invade them as their penance. The 70 by 7 years of punishment. Again, this is something which is frequently talked about with the elders of especially Mount Athos, about how we have the 70 times 7, again, reflecting what is mentioned in the Gospels, of penance, which is, again, correlated with Israel's 70-year Babylonian captivity. And Greece, which is Orthodox, is part of the new Israel, the Orthodox Church, and is chastised 70 times 7. Elder Ananias is quoted as saying, "We will be chastised 70 times 7. So Christ gave us penance. 70 times 7 multiplied, it comes to 539. If we add 539 years to 1453, we get 1992. The period from 1453 to 1992 is interpreted as a long, just punishment under Turkish rule and Western domination. Elder Ananias says, the Balkan Wars and latter events begin to signal the end of this chastisement and the start of the path toward reclaiming the city. He also quotes Saint Cosmas, "Fortunately, God cast us to the Turks and not to the Pope, since the Turks wanted money, but the West would have taken our money and our souls, our faith." Again, a lot of modern day Christians will look at this and think, this is crazy. Why would you rather go to the Muslim Turks than the papal church who claims to be Christian? These people don't understand the history between the Orthodox Church and the Roman Catholic Church. They don't understand that Constantinople was sacked by the Latins. They don't know that the monks were in Mount Athos were killed and slaughtered by the Latins. They don't know that the nuns were raped on the altars of our churches. Again, this history has kind of been brushed over in the past few years in order to promote ecumenism. So again, I stand with Saint Cosmas. I would rather the Turks have control of the city than the Latins. Continuing, we're going to talk with more about Saint Cosmas, the Aetolian, who lived in the 18th century. He is considered an equal of the apostles, and his prophecies, I do have to tell you, if you read through the prophecies of Saint Cosmas, you will be shocked, because the foresight this man had is unbelievable. We'll just go through a few because there are many more. These are just some highlights which I have noticed. So he foretells of inventions such as television. The devil will enter houses, his horns on the roofs, which again metaphorically could be interpreted as TV antennas. You will see a carriage without horses running faster than a rabbit. Again, likely speaking of cars and automobiles. The world will be tied with a wire, likely referring to the telephone or the internet. People will talk from one end of the world to the other as if they were in adjoining rooms. Again, telecommunications. This guy lived in the 18th century, so I don't know how he could have made these predictions unless he was, again, inspired by the Holy Spirit, which all of the elders and saints are. Things will come out of the schools that the mind cannot imagine. Man will lose his mind. Again, this is, I believe, a critique of the modern schooling system, which has brainwashed our youth. I mean, the stuff that is being taught now with the Skittles people, with the lack of God, removing Bibles, the immorality which is spread. Again, St. Cosmas has it bang on when he talks about what is coming out of the schools today. So he's very famous in Greece that he predicted the liberation of Greece, which happened in 1821. At the third generation will come the desired, which again is interpreted as the liberation of Greece. When two Easts come together, they will be liberated. This prophecy has been discussed as, many times Catholic and Orthodox Easter fall on the same day. But more recently, Catholic and Orthodox Easter fell on the same day last year in 2024, which other saints have said is the beginning of the great events and the recapture of the city. He warns of a general war, which the cities will become like huts, after which few people will be left on earth. One will walk half an hour to meet another man. Again, I believe this is a lot of metaphor, just to emphasize how many people will be lost in this war. It can be taken literal. Again, we're talking about the Middle East, we're talking about Greece, type of terrain we're looking at here. He also mentions that the problem of the city, which every time the city is mentioned in these prophecies, it means Constantinople. He also says, the city will be solved, the problem of the city will be solved, meaning Constantinople returning to the Orthodox, just as the Jews regained Jerusalem. The problem of the city will be solved. The Christians, the Greeks, will also take the city of their visions. So much blood will flow that a 3-year-old calf will swim in it. Again, this is the prophesied battle that will happen in Constantinople. And it is said to be one of the bloodiest battles in the history of humanity. Coming to the 20th century, we have Saint Aristocles, who said some words about America. America will feed the whole world, and in the end will face destruction and lose its status as a global superpower. Metropolitan Neophytos, who is the Metropolitan of Morphu in Cyprus, says America is the Great Babylon, again which we covered in the book of Revelation, warning that it will be overwhelmed and drowned by your shores, by special Russian weapons with tsunami-like destruction. Again, this is likely referring to the Poseidon weapons which the Russians currently possess, which are nuclear weapons that detonate underwater and cause tsunamis. This is where the marbled king is next talked about. So he was discussed from the 7th to the 10th century. But now Elder Ephraim of Arizona spoke about this sleeping general named John. So we see that the sleeping general is called John, which again is mentioned in the previous prophecies. One says that the future king, his name will begin with Iota, which is an I in Greek, and end with Sigma, which is the S. And Yannis is John in Greek. So all these prophecies indicate that the future king of the Greeks and Orthodox will be called Yannis or John. So the general John, who was the marble king, was hidden by an angel around the time of his death or during a battle, and God preserved him in time, like the sleeper saints of Ephesus, so that when World War III comes, the great events, he will be resurrected, in a sense, and rule over the Orthodox. So we actually have a story of a holy hierarch on Mount Athos who was in Asia Minor and said he actually saw the king who was sleeping with his right hand on his sword. And the blade is, in the image, see, he's pulling out his sword. The blade is almost drawn. And the story is that once the blade is taken out of the sheath, then comes World War III. Hierotheos said that only a few centimeters are left for it to come out completely. Again, this was said during the 1950s, so a lot of time has passed since then. And, a lot of people have been claiming, a lot of testimony, actually seeing and talking with the Marble King, which again we'll go over in a different video as we don't have time. Chernobyl. Again, everyone knows the story of Chernobyl, which was the nuclear power plant in Ukraine, which melted down. But what not a lot of people know is that this event was predicted in the Bible by name. So, in Revelation chapter 8, verses 10 to 11, a great star fell from heaven, burning like a torch, and its name was Wormwood. Now, the word Chernobyl, when translated to English, actually means wormwood. And not a lot of people know that. And the curse of wormwood was that the water, a third of the waters, became bitter. Again, this is anyone with any understanding of imagery and metaphor can have a good understanding that this is likely referring to the radiation fallout, which again contaminated a lot of Europe, a lot of the water supply, a lot of the agriculture, and spread all across Europe, which I think is just amazing that the book of Revelation was able to predict this so exactly. So now we get to the interesting stuff, which I think a lot of people are here for. Saint Paisios is often attributed to all these prophecies. Even though he's not the only one to discuss these prophecies, he is the one that really popularized it because of the extent he talked about it. But he's not the only one. Let's make it clear. So, Saint Paisios says that a war will begin around the examilia. Now, in Greek, examilia means 6 miles. And it actually was originally talked and discussed with Saint Cosmas, the Etalo. So Saint Cosmas talked about this examilia, saying that the Turks will come to the examilia and that is when war will begin. And at the time, no one really knew what that meant. Some had hypothesized that examilia was a village in Greece or a village nearby. And Saint Paisios, during his lifetime, which again are over 150 years later or more, said no, the examilia was the 6 nautical miles between Greece's waters and the Turkish waters. Now, anyone who pays attention to the news knows that Turkey and Greece have been in argument about the examilia or the 6 nautical miles for many years. And again, if even recently Cyprus had a deal with Lebanon recognizing their maritime zones, and Turkey was not happy, let's just put it like that. And they haven't been happy for a while, as the Aegean has a lot of natural gas which they can't get access to because of the examilia. Continuing. A war will erupt between Russia and Turkey. The Russians will ultimately prevail, and the city will fall into their hands. Then, in time, they will give it back to us. This is how Constantinople will return to Greece. Turkey will dismembered into 3 to 4 parts. Greeks take their lands, Armenians theirs, the Kurds theirs. We see similar stuff from Elder Joseph of Vatopedi, or Manathos. He says Russia will suddenly invade Turkey, sweeping through Persia to Palestine. Constantinople will be burned, with only Hagia Sophia preserved. Only the temple of God will remain. There will be 3 days and nights of slaughter at the city, with 18 nations annihilating each other until an angel stops the war. The calf will swim and drown in blood. The battle will last 3 days and nights. 18 nations will slaughter each other. Then an angel will say, "Stop, enough vengeance." Elder Ephraim speaks that after this will come a 33-year reign of the prophesied king, and after that the Antichrist. So, in the book of Revelation, we learned that the Euphrates River is drying up. And if anyone's been paying attention to the news, the Euphrates is drying up like bad, alright? Go look at Google Earth shots from the 1990s compared to now. It is drying up. And we know the reason for this. Because the Turks are building dams and reservoirs blocking off the flow of water. Saint Paisios says, "When you hear that the waters of the Euphrates are being cut off by the Turks with dams, then know that we have already entered into the preparation of the Great War." He even jokes 200 million Chinese will only be able to drink from 1 cup of water. Again, not literal, but you get the idea. And we see when these dams were built. We have the Kiban Dam in 1974, the Karakaya Dam in 1987, the Ataturk Dam completed in 1992, and severe flow cuts in 2021. Again, these are recent developments. This technological control of the Euphrates is presented as a literal preparation of the Asian armies crossing the dry riverbed in the future World War III scenario. Again, you can see the image in the background, but I'm going to show you this because I posted this on my Instagram quite recently. So in 2006, you see the Euphrates River, how much water there is in that, right? And then compared to 2023, how much water's left, right? And don't take my word for it. You can go to Google Earth right now and go to the country of Iraq, and you will see how badly this river has dried up. All right? And you have the comparison here. Now, when I posted this on my Instagram, I got a lot of crap because I made the observation that the river looks like it has a big omega in the river, as you can see in the post on the left and the right. Omega is the last letter of the Greek alphabet, and it does signal the end, when Christ says, "I'm the Alpha and the Omega." And a lot of people called me schizophrenic for this, but I'm telling you, go to a map of Google Earth, look at a map of Iraq, and you will see a big fat omega on the country of Iraq. Again, is this man-made? Likely, but God uses people to enact his will. So I would not say that this is saying that Jesus is coming back anytime soon, right? That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that I believe it is a sign that we should repent, that we should come back to Christ, to his church, and pay more attention to the signs of the times. All right? The signs of the times. Continuing. So, remember how we're talking about that chastisement of Constantinople? Elder Ananias explained that 1453 plus 539 is 1992, which marks the end of the chastisement of the Greeks. He notes, it began in 1992. In order to reclaim the city, Constantinople, the matter will begin in the Balkans. He explicitly ties 1992 to the modern Balkan conflicts, saying the evil will begin from Bosnia Herzegovina. Okay, I can't say that, but Herzegovina. Yeah. And that this is part of the path toward Russia striking Turkey. In 1992, again, Paisios, who reposed in 1994, so we know this is real, talked about the exomilia. Destruction will come, the beginning of the end. When will these events take place? Someone asked him. When the United States declares the establishment of an independent Kurdish state. Now, this has not happened yet, and is one of the signs we need to be vigilant and look out for. So, again, reading the news, the Kurds in Turkey, let's just say there's a lot of unrest, especially now. So, I wouldn't be surprised in the next few months or year that we see a Kurdish state being recognized. Now up to 2010, which is the economic collapse of Greece, which I think is very relevant to how the globalists and the elites were able to seize the Greek government and basically trap Greece in these bad deals that have just crippled the nation. I mean, you look at Greece now, the current prime minister is getting the country out of debt, which, again, Mitsotakis, let's just say I don't believe, when people tell me good news, I just don't want to believe it, right? Because he is giving the Greek people a surplus, but he passed, Skittles marriage in Greece, right? So I do think that there's a more of an elite plan going on with him. Again, that's a topic for another video. But continuing, St. Paisios had warned that in the 1980s, they will impose unbearable taxes on the people, and that Greece would be kept on life support. Again, metaphorically, they will be on a ventilator. Under foreign economic oppression, this was fulfilled with the Greek debt crisis of 2010 and the ensuing EU-IMF memoranda. Greece's economy nearly collapsed. Harsh austerity measures and heavy taxes were imposed, and the country was indeed kept barely solvent by international bail loans. Again, Paisios actually mentioned these by name if you go read the source material. Now, this is where it starts getting interesting. So pay attention. This is very important. We see that Elder Joseph Vatopedi insists that nature will rebel from all of these things that have happened in the world, all the unnatural things. He describes a unique worldwide apostasy. He links this directly to St. Paul, that day will not come except there come a falling away first. He says we are now living that apostasy. Never throughout the entire history of the world has there ever existed such glut of apostasy, from the youngest to the eldest, and on a global scale. He explains that the lawlessness has become law, so that transgressing God's commandments is not only tolerated, but formally legislated. And this is precisely what reveals the iniquity of the son of lawlessness. Again, going back to that idea that the Greek government was the first Orthodox nation to pass Skittles marriage in 2024. We see unnatural laws as well, like, I don't know if this is going to get the video get taken down, but killing people in their mother's womb, alright? These are unnatural laws and are antithetical to the gospel of Jesus Christ. And one of the eldresses, the Hierondissa, right, which is just elderess in Greek, in Attica warn that these unnatural laws, example celebrating pride, redefining marriages and gender, will bring disasters. Again, nature will rebel. God is patient, but he is also just, and he will come through on his promises. And yeah, this is something which everyone needs to pay attention to, because we see that the globalists are trying to introduce digital IDs, which is exactly what Saint Paisios warned about, alright? Exactly. So he says that these preludes, so the cards, numbers, and systems, are not the mark of the beast, right? Because the mark of the beast will be a denial of Christ himself and have the number 666. However, these are the foretaste, or the what comes before the mark. So accepting it, even though it's not the mark of the beast, it is a fall still, because these are an introduction towards that mark of the beast. He says, the card contains the devil, and I sign that I accept it. How can I do that? He says about an ID that encodes 666. Yet he clarifies, the ID card is not the seal. It is the introduction to the seal. The church must speak out and explain to the faithful that if they accept the new ID, it will amount to a spiritual fall. At the same time, he notes that God may intervene before such systems fully roll out. By the time the new ID card comes out, it is entirely possible that we may have the wrath of God upon us. They will first give you various cards to get you accustomed to using them, but when they eventually consolidate everything into a single card, do not take it, because that will be connected to the mark. But ultimately, war would break out before full implementation. Again, anyone who pays attention to EU policy knows that these digital IDs, right, are mandatory in all of Europe. You can look this up, by the end of 2026. In November 5th this year, every Greek citizen was automatically issued a new personal number, a personal identifying number. And the EU is mandating that every EU nation has digital ID by the end of 2026. So if what Saint Paisios is saying is true, then we can expect a lot of these events to start very, very soon, which is why I think people need to pay attention to this. Again, Elder Joseph Vatopedi, he also speaks of the coming IDs. Hold on just 1 second. He also speaks of the coming IDs. He says the number 666 is a numerical means of understanding the number of the beast. It is not the seal of the Antichrist, right? So this is a prelude to the Antichrist, not the final thing which will come when the Antichrist is here. The real seal, he says, will be a personal and forced. The seal of the Antichrist will at that time be noticeable, personal, and it will be administered by force, even to those who will accept it. All these things are preludes. Shouting about it is the prelude. It is not necessary to consider those preludes. We see preludes through the sinfulness of people. Now, this story is something I want to personally talk about more in the future. But I did want to summarize it for you guys so you get an idea of what is predicted if this vision is true. Again, this is not infallible. This is someone's personal experience. So again, we cannot say if this is true or false. But in my opinion, I believe it to be true, as it perfectly aligns with what we are seeing. So, first off, A woman in 2020 again was on a trip, you could say, to one of the Greek islands, and then the story goes that if you throw this bottle into the water, the message inside will go to the Archangel Michael. I summarize that a lot, but that's generally the idea. And this woman on this journey was with her family and encountered a man who she claimed insinuated that he was the Archangel Michael. And I will talk about this in future videos, of course, but what this person says, he claimed he knew everything about her and her family, where they got these icons from, their cross, I believe, what they're doing there with the archangels. And he says something very interesting. He says, "The money you gave me, I do not need it. Tomorrow I will light a candle for each of you." He said all our names without us telling him. "When I go to Hagia Sophia in Constantinople, tomorrow is the last day and I want to worship." Now, this is very interesting because the day after was when Hagia Sophia was turned back into a mosque. Let that sink in. This was the last day, and this person who was somewhere in Greece said that he would go to Constantinople and worship there, as it is the last day he can do it. He also said something very interesting. 7 years from today, Archangel Michael will come and strike his fiery sword there, and then all that you will live through during these 7 years will end. After that, you will live for many, many years in Christ. So, if this experience that this person had was true, again, it is not infallible, so take it with a grain of salt. These great events are said to end in 2027, which is very, very soon. The great events, again, are in reference to World War III. And Elder Gabriel, who I'll again make videos of, says there's 3 great signs before World War III. He says 1, the leveling of Gaza, which happened. I mean, you look at any satellite footage from Gaza nowadays, it is in complete ruins. The second is the Israeli strike on Iran. When Israel strikes the nuclear program of Iran, which happened June 13th this year, so quite recent. And the last one is the fall of Erdogan, the Turkish Prime Minister, which has not happened yet. Which, again, 2 out of the 3 signs have happened. So all we're waiting on now is the fall of Erdogan. Metropolitan Neophytos comments on this. From now on, prophecies are finished. Prophecies are the headlines. We'll see them on TV, hear them on the radio. Now, I wanted to talk about the strike on Iran, which happened in June this year. Elder Theodore of Crete gives the same idea in more detail. He is quoted as saying, you can find this quote written many, many years ago. This guy proposed in 2016. "You will be drinking your coffee, and you will hear that the Jews hit the nuclear program of Iran. That is when the big events will commence, and during that same time period, or a little before that, Erdogan will fall." So, again, we're waiting on that fall of Erdogan. But this is why I've started taking this stuff more seriously. There's another quote from him that no one posts about. Again, I read about this before, so I know it's real. He says, "On that fateful Friday morning, when a penetrating bomb strikes a nuclear installation in Iran, events will accelerate with unimaginable speed. When the Jews hit Persia's nuclear program, then the great events will begin. At the same time, or a little earlier, Erdogan will fall." You know when the nuclear sites were hit? June 13th, which is a Friday, in the morning. You understand this guy passed away in 2016 and he predicted this? Just let that sink in, because a problem I have with a lot of people is that they ask for proof for our faith. And then when proof happens, they might acknowledge it, dismiss it, and then never talk about it again. I'm still talking about this to this day, and I feel like everyone's forgotten about it. Let us not be forgetful. Let us remember what has already been done. Because God gives us signs, and we choose to ignore them. He predicted it would happen on a Friday morning before Greeks would wake up, right, and hear the news and drink their coffee. Me personally, I live in Australia. Do you know the first time I heard this was when I was with my friends drinking coffee? I'm just saying, stuff like this happens and it really makes you reconsider how you view these things. So I'm going to, again, post more about this. I'm going to continue spreading the word on this so people are more aware, so people are more prepared. But again, it's a choice that people have. If you choose to ignore it, fine. But don't say we didn't tell you so. We didn't tell you so. So the elder of Agrippa, Panagiotis Tsiolis, right, who passed away in 2021. Sorry, just responding to a message. Continuing. Elder of Agrippa, Panagiotis Tsiolis of Agrippa. He was an elder who reposed in 2021, and he gave some prophecies which I believe has been documented by a Greek journalist. He was with his godson, George, and he said to him, this is, again, all on record, he says, you won't, and when he's talking about military conscription here, right? If there's a war between Greece and Turkey. And he's talking to his godson, and he says, you won't report to Evros, you'll go to Rio. You'll wear a cross and tell people to go up the mountains right of Nafbaktos, because NATO troops will pass and ravage everything. 10 days later, George's conscription order is indeed changed from Evros to Rio. So these are locations in Greece. Just making sure, am I still live, guys? Because someone's messaging me saying it's not live. Just give me a thumbs up in the chat that you guys can still hear me, that you're still up to where I am talking about the E65. Just give me a thumbs up and we'll continue, because I just want to make sure I'm not talking to myself. Alright, good. Okay, thank you. So, Elder of Agrippa predicted this, right, with his godson. But he says something else which is very important. He says to his godson, George, war will break out when the new road from Domokos to Lamia, the E65 southern section, is completed. Then there will be great famine in Greece. It will not last long, and then we will go to the city, Vasilevousa, which again is the Queen City, Hagia Sophia. So in 2024, the Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis inaugurated the southern section of the E65. And the E65, you can look up the current scheduling plan, is predicted to be completed at the end of 2025 and the start of 2026. So somewhere after this, very shortly, there's likely to be a famine in Greece and the start of the Greek-Turkish War. Another sign is from Elder Vasilios Gavskogavlitis. So it's written in English. It's probably easier if it was in Greek. After the red moon, it will all begin. Everyone will see it crimson on the horizon. So the next 3 blood moons, according to Google, right, I did a little Google search before, is the 2nd to the 3rd of March 2026, the next 31st December 2028 to 1st January 2029, and after that, 20th to the 21st of December 2029. Again, these dates keep lining up with 2026, which is why I have dedicated a lot of effort into making these videos, right? You know, the IDs, the E65, the red moon, all aligns with 2026. Again, and the precursors, which is the nuclear facilities being hit. Also, the Gaza being destroyed. These are all signs we should be wary of. Now we're getting into what is predicted for Greece. So, all the elders, especially Metropolitan Neophytos, says that there will be a large geophysical earthquake in Greece, in Greek territory, causing population movements. Elder Paisios and others saw these as both consequences of sin and precursors to tribulation. So, Neophytos, in a lot of his interviews, says that he hopes and prays that this big earthquake is substituted for many small earthquakes, right, from praying to the Panagia, Saint Mary, dividing it into smaller ones. But again, there is still it's still possible for there to be a big one if people aren't praying, if people aren't repenting. Only time will tell. There's another anonymous elder, which I can give the link to for anyone who's curious after the video, which says that there will be a global economic collapse, which again will affect Greece. He says the global economic collapse will begin in America. The dollar will become worthless, and the euro will vanish entirely. This financial breakdown will occur within an hour at midnight. In the words given, the moment will mark the lockdown of the banks. Again, this is kind of scary because you look at what's happening in America right now. Their debt to GDP ratio is insane. They are basically just paying off interest now, and eventually there is going to be a recession. It is unavoidable. They're either going to print their way out of it. Look, there's no actual solution. This is why everyone is so concerned about where the future economic, the fiat currencies, the fiscal policy of the US, where that is going. And it's something which not only you should be worried about in terms of your monetary gain, because again, you need to live, you need to make sure your money's okay, not to the extent of worshipping it, but also that this is a precursor to the great events. So again, something you should keep an eye out on. Elder Nectarios warns that one summer morning the banks will freeze. Elder Nectarios Vitalis gives one of the clearest concrete triggers for Greece. One summer morning we will awaken to news on the radio and television that Greece has declared bankruptcy. From that moment on, all bank deposits will be frozen to repay the nation's debt. That is when the worst will begin for Greece. Here, the cancellation, restructuring of debt, and the freezing of deposits mark not deliverance, but the beginning of internal social and economic suffering, poverty, hunger, and disorder that dovetail with the wider prophetic script: famine, shortages, people seeking land, etc. Another story. Saint Raphael's vision. Until the head of the one you will meet in Athens falls. So there's a vision attributed to Saint Raphael, who appeared to a man before Erdogan's 2010 visit to Athens. The saint says the Turks will continue to cut off heads until the head of the one you will meet tomorrow in Athens falls. Then history will turn a page, and the Turks will become refugees. Again, interesting that this is insinuating that Erdogan will fall. Either this will be biologically, right, or it will be he's deposed as the leader of Turkey. Neophytos, who actually knew Saint Paisios, Nectarios, the modern day saints, he speaks a lot about the future Greco-Turkish war and the closure of the Bosphorus Straits. Metropolitan Neophytos says plainly that while Erdogan lives, the truly apocalyptic scale events are held back. Nothing serious will happen as long as this Erdogan lives. Know this. The serious things will happen when Erdogan falls. When he falls, the great things will happen. Take this as a point. He adds that Cyprus will be under special protection even when those great things begin. I also want to add something which a lot of people are ignoring, that Turkey has been classified by many of the I don't know how to say it without getting flagged, but the Izzies, right? The people in the Middle East who claim to be descendants of Abraham, they are at all-time high tensions. A lot of the people in the Israeli parliament have called Turkey the new Iran. Turkey has threatened hostile measures against Israel. Israel has been giving Cyprus weapons, which, again, likely to defend itself from Turkey. And we see that when we continue in this stream, that the reason the Turkish president will fall is to have more Western-style leadership, right? Because right now, Erdogan, his dream is to basically re-establish the Ottoman Empire, right? And in order to put in new Western leaders, right? The West isn't just America. You have to remember that the West is the Izzies as well, right? In the Middle East. And right now, that all high tensions. And let's just say that it hasn't stopped them assassinating someone before in history. So I wouldn't be surprised if he is assassinated by this country in the Middle East. So again, that is just something you have to watch out for, because we know it will be a fall. We don't know if it's biological, whether he's assassinated, or it will be because he is deposed, like he's voted out. Again, only time will tell. Let us just pray he's not assassinated, even though, again, I don't like him, but yeah, wouldn't wish that on my enemy. So, Saint Paisios gives the spark for the Greek-Turkish crisis. He says that, for example, the problem will start from Thrace. It will be a diplomatic episode that cannot be resolved. This is likely been associated with a declaration of the Muslim Greeks, Turks who live there. He ties this to the long-discussed extension of territorial waters. When you hear on television being referenced the issue of miles, of expanding the miles of the territorial sea from 6 to 12 miles, then war will come from behind, then it follows. A later testimony clarifies a scenario he gave. Before or during the discussion about the miles, the Muslims of Western Thrace would declare independence. In response, we would say, we have been right all along, and we won't expand to 12 miles just yet. And you within our territory are making a declaration. That's when we will proceed to expand to 12 miles. Here we're going to talk about more of the fall of Erdogan. Neophytos explains that the next phase of Erdogan, power passes to pro-Western Kemalists who will provoke Russia. Erdogan will do very little. In regards to us, he will trigger a small episode. as was the case with Emir. Erdogan will fall, and after him, inexperienced people, pro-Westerners, Kemalists, will take power. And they will create big problems. They will ruin relations with Russia. They will betray Russia and make Russia furious. An anonymous elder, reported by Dionysius Macros, gives a more detailed scenario. Erdogan is seen in a vision covered in blood. Everyone mourned his loss. Again, this is insinuating that he could be assassinated. Again, let's take everything with a grain of salt. Not write it in stone yet. But this is what our saints and elders say. His son briefly succeeds him, but is completely incompetent, commonly called a potato. Nice. The Kemalists, with the help of the Americans, will win the elections, which is interesting. Elder Vasilios Galivitis. I need to read in Greek. Even names the islands. The time draws near when the Turks will seize 3 islands, Lesbos, Chios, and Rhodes. Their occupation will be brief, just 3 months. Blood will be shed on both sides, but Turkey itself will eventually disintegrate. So, going back to the Ex Emilia, St. Cosmas was right in what he foretold about the Ex Emilia, the 6 miles. Ex Emilia are not villages or cities, but the 6 nautical miles surrounding the Greek coastlines and our islands. Every point that lies 6 miles from the Greek shores is Ex Emilia. When the Turkish fleet moves against Greece and reaches Ex Emilia, 6 miles from our shores, they will be destroyed. This is God's will. That moment will commence all the events leading up to the return of the city, Constantinople. When they reach 6 miles, destruction will come. This will mark the beginning of the end. When you hear intense discussions on television and the media about the Aegean, about the territorial waters 6 miles, 12 miles, and so on, know what that war is near. As soon as they become a government, they will attack Greece. They will strike many directions to disorganize the Greek army. In the end, they will occupy 3 islands. The same elders say Russia will not tolerate this. NATO tilt. The Russians will attack. Turkey will have no life after the rise of the Kemalists to power. The Russians will break it up. Greece will go through great poverty and hunger, but with glory, glory. A similar word from an old Athenite, the elder of Panagios, is reported. Disturbing changes are imminent under the leadership of Turkey. Greece will lose 3 islands within the year. Poverty will pass, but with glory, glory. Another sign before this conflict is the embassies from each country being removed. When we see Greece taking its embassy from Turkey and Turkey taking its embassy from Greece, then we should say, by the embassies of the Theotokos, Savior, save us. Again, that's a bit of a joke because he's referencing the Divine Liturgy. Because in the Divine Liturgy we say, through the intercessions of the Theotokos, Savior, save us. So he's doing a bit of play on words there. So these signs are the withdrawal of the embassies, plus the 6 to 12 mile dispute, plus the Thrace crisis, together form a tight pre-war package in these prophecies. Again, these are signs for us to look out for. The closure of the Straits and the Russian onslaught. The turning point from regional crisis to world war is the closure of the Bosphorus Dardanelles. Metropolitan Neophytos says of the post-Erdogan Kemalists, they will close the Bosphorus Straits, and their friends, the pseudo-friends, the Russians, from friends will transform into enemies in one night, and there will be not a single city in Turkey which will not be bombarded. The elder of Panagios agrees from a geostrategic angle. The reason for the declaration of war with the Turks will be the closure of the sea straits. He explains that Russia will see Turkey's attack on Greece, and the seizure of territory as part of NATO's broader game, and that the US intends to rely on bases in Suda and Alexandropoli to control the region without needing the support of the crumpled Greek army. So, the Russian invasion of Turkey. This is one of the big signs, because ask anyone, Russia and Turkey have really good relations right now. So anyone saying, like, if you tell anyone about these prophecies, they're like, Russia's going to invade Turkey? What are you talking about? They're allies. Well, the prophecies say that Russia will be betrayed by Turkey, right? Which will anger Russia so much that they will invade. So, again, if you believe in these prophecies and you tell people that Russia will invade Turkey, and it happens, I think that they have no excuse but to become Orthodox Christians, in my opinion. Continuing, Russia will move quickly. It will invade Georgia, Ukraine, Armenia, Azerbaijan. It will strike Turkey from the north through Georgia and the Black Sea. Turkey will be destroyed, dismembered. 1/3 will be killed, 1/3 baptized, and 1/3 will go to Mesopotamia. So Saint Cosmas said the same thing. Saint Cosmas said that 1/3 will go to the Kokini Milia, which is the red apple tree, again, a place in Mesopotamia. And it's the same thing said by Methodius, right? If you read Methodius, Cosmas, Paisios, they all say the same thing. In the same way, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. So, again, something you guys should look into. More creepy, creepy is not the right word, a kind of scary thing is that the elders of Mount Athos say that Scandinavia will join NATO, right? Believing it to be safe, and will suffer devastating strikes from Russia. A lot of them saying that Finland will basically be destroyed. So, again, that's just something we have to look out for. Pray that it doesn't happen, because, yeah, no one wants that. So, pray. Through our prayers, we can delay, we can stop these events from happening. Yeah, just keep it in the back of your mind, please. So, after Turkey invades, Russia invades Turkey, they'll have it for, I think, 6 months. And this will be enough to basically gather NATO, the West, Israel, America, to declare war on Russia. So, to summarize what the Saints say, Western forces, 3 million troops, land in Albania, intend to cross east. Judah destroyed roadwork, majority diverted through Greece, Egnatia, Thessaly, because Greek roads are less damaged. Russians avoid bombing on Orthodox neighbors. Again, Greece is not going to have a big part in this war, right? The Saints say that Greece will be a neighbor and will play defensive, but they won't have an active role in this war, which will be for its benefit. And we see this. NATO will have a deep hatred of Greeks for not fighting Russia and for having less destruction, right? I can already imagine in my head people getting upset with Greece because they haven't declared war on Russia for invading Turkey. This is linked to the new Crusaders, who repeat the shame of their ancestors. Looting, rapes, murders, churches burned, especially villages along major roads in fertile plains. The only safe places are in the rocks, pits, mountain villages. Cosmas even said villages by the road will suffer. Rocks and pits will be full of people. Again, if you live in Greece, something you should be concerned about, something you should be prepared for. Have somewhere to go if you live near a road, because as the Saints say, the ancestors of the NATO people, the Europeans, a lot consider them to be descendants of the Latin Crusaders who did the same stuff in Constantinople. History never repeats itself, but it rhymes, alright? America, Europe, and geophysical judgments. America, identified by several elders as Babylon the Great in the Book of Revelation. America, drunk on fornication, exporting pornography, Satanism, gender confusion via Hollywood, etc. America will be broken into pieces, starve, suffer huge geophysical disasters, tsunamis, mega earthquakes, possibly Yellowstone eruption. The country which fed the whole world will come to starvation. America will be broken into pieces, 90% of its citizens killed. Again, a list of saints who say this. San Andreas and coastal submergence. Or Yellowstone volcano plus nuclear war factors, again with the Poseidon weapons from Russia. Elder Ephraim's view, within some years after his people repose, the great events would begin and the US would pay for many years of sin. And if you live in the US, if you want any hope, Elder Ephraim actually built many monasteries and churches in the US for this reason. So along the west coast, I believe, he built them as a sanctuary for safety for people. So if you live anywhere near that area, if stuff starts popping off, I would suggest going there for safety. This is the event which has been prophesied since the beginning, the great end to the war. NATO troops converge outside Constantinople from Thessaly and Egnatia. A new crusade wage is paid. Devastating loss at the city walls. 18 nations in front of the city, which again is said by Methodius. 18 languages. Only the temple of God Hagia Sophia will remain, the adornment of the Holy Church. Everyone will be defeated. No one will emerge victorious. The battle will last 3 days and 3 nights. 700 million dead, according to Joseph of Vatopedi. Now, is he saying in this specific battle, is he saying that in this specific battle, 700 million will die? Again, I cannot answer that. In my opinion, which should be taken with a grain of salt, he's talking about the conclusion of all like world wars, like starting with like World War I up until now. Because again, I cannot imagine 700 million people dying. But again, we don't know what the future holds. We don't know what's going to happen. So again, pray. It could be metaphorical too. Just pray that whoever's in this battle finds God at least before. Again, Saint Cosmas says, the sea will be filled with blood. A calf could swim in it. Then, a heavenly sign, star plus a fire red cross. Rainbow over the city. The voice of an angel, stop. Enough vengeance, stand right. And the war will stop abruptly. At this time is when Saint King John will be revealed. On the third day, those few survivors will look up and see high in the sky to the right a great star shining brighter than the sun. Beneath the star a fiery red cross will shine. Archangel Michael will cry out, stand still, enough. Everyone will drop their weapons and the war ends. This is the slap Christ gives to the anti-Christic system that Paisios mentions. A short but decisive intervention. A voice will cry out, hurry to the right, follow the arc that emerges from the star. There you will find a holy man, one of mine. I have chosen him as a shepherd for my flock. You too shall choose him. This is where King John, the marble king, Saint John Vatadzis, revealed between the columns in Hagia Sophia, or on 2 columns. An international committee or ambassadors go to Greece, Constantinople to crown him. Russians have taken the city first, but it will be given to Greece under heavy Western pressure and due to their own crises. Europe consents only after great disaster in America. Now, what follows when King John is appointed as king of the Orthodox and of Greece? Constantinople will again be Greek and Orthodox, rebuilt from scratch. Again, Saint Paisios even said to a student at the time from Khanthi, who I think was studying engineering, said that you will be part of the people who help redesign and rebuild Constantinople. Which, again, he is definitely still alive. He was young at the time, so he'd be probably in his 50s now, 60s. Liturgy in Hagia Sophia will resume. Orthodox missions go global. People beg Christians to tell them about Christ. The Greek language is highly sought for theology. Many Turks, Kurds, Armenians, Westerners become Orthodox. Monasteries function as spiritual special forces. A final ecumenical council will be convened. Again, this is how I believe is the only way for the church to get unity, right? A lot of people, especially now in Constantinople, when the Pope and the EP talked about reunion, it's all fake. I'm sorry, it's fake. It's not real. It's a psyop. Do not believe it, all right? Because we don't believe the same thing, right? And no side is going to concede to the other on anything. Either one rejects all of its done and then joins the other, or vice versa, right? The only way we can have true reunion is a divine intervention, in my opinion, that God will basically show to everyone that orthodoxy is the only truth, right? There's not many truths, there's not many churches. Orthodoxy must be preached to all nations. And this will be, and any issues we have in the church right now, like the calendar or canonical jurisdiction, right? A final ecumenical council will be convened to wipe all these problems away. One prophecy says the council produces a book of God, or the book of God, that will guide humanity until the end. Under Saint John, world orthodoxy, just laws. Just laws, like good laws. Global mission, so that no one can say, I did not know your book. This is the last slide. I wanted to leave on a high note because, again, a lot of the themes we talked about are scary and stuff that is really out of your control. And you shouldn't keep yourself up at night with it. You should just pray that whatever happens is reduced, that God shows mercy on everyone, and that whatever happens, it happens with the least amount of damage, alright? So, I wanted to read out some quotes. So, Saint John Vadatzis, who was a historical figure, a lot of people in Greece have actually reported to seeing him and talking with him, right? Which I'll do in a future video. I'll go over all the instances which people have talked to him. And this is one quote which really stood out to me. He said, very difficult days are to come. He urged intense prayer and announced, I am King John Vadatzis, and I have been given the mission by the Lord to proclaim the gospel to the entire world, that all people may become Orthodox. This was said about 2013, according to the testimony. Saint Cosmas, Christ will give his creation a chance to be saved. People will return to Christ, and spiritual peace will come to the world for many years. And to end on a high note, Elder Paniotis Tsiolis, who claimed to meet with the Saint King John many times, said, he has risen, his sword is drawn, and he is ready for the Queen City. The events will come. And that's it. That's, yeah. That's the end of the PowerPoint. Again, I'm sorry I couldn't cover everything. This took me a while to put together. It wasn't easy. Again, if there's any mistakes, let me know in the comments. If you have any questions now, you can ask in the live chat. I'll try my best to answer them, but if I can't, I'll get back to you.